through transcendence. And there were various practices that were introduced in order to achieve that transcendence and alleviate suffering. And one of them was to start in a steady, comfortable seat, to be able to meditate for long periods of time and to avoid distraction. Well, it was discovered that it's easier to find a steady, comfortable seat if you've done a little bit of stretching beforehand. So the physical poses actually only were developed as a way to bring the body into balance so that it could be still for long periods of time to meditate. And in the ancient tradition, the breathing practices were far more prevalent than the physical postures. So we have meditation, we have the breathing practices, we do have the physical postures, relaxation, mindfulness, and then also the philosophy, which is your perspective on the world, the way that you see things, the cognitive reframing, so taking a situation that seems negative and thinking about it differently so that you see the positive. So yoga is a whole lot broader than just, doing a few stretches. And what I'm going to talk about is how that broad concept of yoga is actually what is effective for weight loss, not simply the movement of yoga poses that some people practice as a form of exercise. So, most yoga practices are not vigorous exercise. There are some yoga practices that are vigorous, and I would actually caution against them for the vast majority of people. So there are some people that are very fit and athletic who have a clear sense of their body and their limitations and are able to go into a vigorous yoga class and practice with awareness and with moderation. If you're practicing yoga with somebody barking orders in your ear, it is not yoga. Yoga means union. And that is union of mind and body, and that is not happening if you're in a situation of stress, if you are not listening to your body and what it's telling you to do or not to do. So there are a lot of things that are practiced as yoga that are actually missing the very essence of what yoga is. So we were talking a little bit earlier in the exercise portion that the kind of exercise that works is the kind of exercise that you do. And it turns out that yoga might be a kind of exercise that you would actually do. When I met my mentor at Johns Hopkins, she had just taken her first yoga class. She was married to an exercise physiologist, had hated exercise her entire life. She used to slog through her time on the treadmill, distracting herself in any way possible. And as a psychotherapist and a psychology researcher, she understood that maybe was not the best mindset, but she knew she needed to exercise for her health, and she thought that was the only way that she could get through it. And then she took a yoga class, and she wanted to pay attention. She wanted to be present. She was enjoying the experience of being in her body. It challenged her in new ways, and she didn't want to just check out. And she realized that could actually be very helpful for our patients in a variety of ways. And that is perhaps why yoga tends to have at least as high adherence as exercise, and likely more adherence, because people are more likely to stick with it for a lifetime. The study subjects that enrolled in our trial at Johns Hopkins back in maybe 2005, most of them are still practicing yoga to this day. And the replication of that research at NIH, we followed up with them a year later, and they are all still practicing yoga. So if it's a kind of exercise that you're likely to do, then it's more likely to be beneficial. In addition, it's something that you don't have to go to the gym for. Sure, there are yoga classes at the gym, but once you know how to practice yoga and you know how to modify it for your own body and stay safe and pay attention, you can do it in your own home with a DVD, with videos on the internet, with a book, with just your own memory of the practice. So it requires very little resources, which is one of the reasons why we've been bringing it to underserved populations who might not have access to safe outdoor spaces or to a lot of equipment that can do this in their own homes. All right, so just for the caloric math here, The kind of yoga that most people do, and the kind of yoga that I would suggest is safe and appropriate for most people, is not going to burn any more calories than walking at 3 miles per hour. In fact, less. Like half as many calories as walking at 3 miles per hour. And so if it takes walking a football field to burn an M&M, you're very unlikely to burn enough calories during yoga practice to burn off a meal of fast food. And so that can't possibly be how yoga is affecting weight loss. It turns out, though, that people who practice yoga tend to have a healthier weight. And people who practice yoga over time are more likely to maintain a healthy weight and to gain less weight. So in America, we tend to gain about 2 pounds of fat per year. It tends to be in the range of like between Halloween and New Year's. And then we tend to not lose it. And at the same time, we're losing muscle because we tend to not do the kind of exercise that maintains our muscle mass. It turns out that people who practice yoga have less weight gain over time than people who don't practice yoga. And for those who are overweight, the difference is even more pronounced. And so here's one way that that happens. One way that that happens is that people who practice yoga tend to eat differently. So although Chris and Jason talked about a low-carb diet as being effective, I will say that I'm vegan, which is not a low-carb diet and has been very effective for me. Everyone is different, everyone's genetic makeup is different, and everyone's perspective on diet is different. But there is a yogic philosophy to diet, and that is the tenet of ahimsa, or non-harming. Non-harming means not harming yourself with your practices and not harming others. And that applies to diet. It also applies to all the other choices that we make. So that's how yoga has ethical principles in it. So if I'm going to eat in a way that doesn't harm me, that means I'm not going to McDonald's. If I'm going to eat in a way that doesn't harm me, I'm not eating a Snickers bar. I'm eating food that is providing me with nourishment that is not going to harm my body. And it also considers how the food choices that you make affect animals and affect the planet. And we can talk about this all day long, but there are ways that you can make choices with your diet, even if you are eating animals and animal products, that is kinder to the animals and kinder to the planet. And what happens is that people who practice yoga tend to think a little bit more about these issues and want to live a little bit differently, and oftentimes adopt a vegetarian diet or a kinder diet for themselves and for others. Additionally, people who practice yoga are more aware of their bodies. They're paying attention. Remember when we were paying attention to how we were standing and how one side was different from the other? If you learn how to pay attention to your body, then you also tend to notice when you're hungry and when you're full. And therefore, you tend to not eat when you aren't hungry, and you tend to stop before you get full. And of course, that's going to affect weight. There is a practice called mindful eating, and that means paying attention during the process of eating. If you learn to be more mindful in life in general, and that can start on the yoga mat, that means not focusing on what has already happened or what's going to happen, but being fully present in the moment as it arises without distraction. And the more you practice that, the better you get at it, which means that when I wash the dishes, I am mindfully washing the dishes. And when I'm folding the clothes, I'm mindfully folding the clothes. When I'm taking a walk, I'm mindfully taking a walk, not paying attention to things in the past or the future. So when I'm eating, I'm noticing how that food tastes. And when you notice what you're eating, then you tend to be more satiated, more satisfied, as opposed to you're watching television, you got a bag of chips in your lap, and the commercial break comes and you realize the bag is empty and you don't even know where all the chips went. So in that kind of circumstance, you're less likely to feel satisfied whether or not you're full, because you didn't have the full experience of all of the senses engaged in that meal or that snack. Whereas when you sit down to a gorgeous salad full of colors and notice all of the textures and flavors and how they move around in your mouth, you're more likely to be satisfied by it. Another concept in yoga is santosha, or being content with whatever it is. Sort of like, all right, I can roll with this. Whatever this is going to be, I'm going to make the most of it, and it's going to be okay. and brahmacharya, which is moderation. Everything in my father likes to say, everything in moderation, including moderation, which means it's okay to not be in moderation all the time. But that also, obviously, if you're living in moderation, would tend to facilitate weight loss as well. And then there's the effect that yoga has on mood. So people who practice yoga tend to have improvements in mood, both improvements in depressive symptoms and improvements in stress. And we know that when you're feeling depressed, that can affect the food choices you make. And when you're feeling stressed, that can affect the food choices you make. How many of you have ever eaten because you were stressed? Yeah, okay, so not even necessarily hungry, just like, you needed something to crunch on, right? Okay, if you're practicing yoga and you're feeling less stressed, you might be less likely to make that choice. And also, people tend to eat differently when they're depressed. Some people tend to eat more, some people tend to eat less. But the choices that we make, so when you ate because you were stressed, was it carrots and hummus? Probably not. Probably not. So stress and depressive symptoms affect not only our food quantity, but also food quality. And then there's sleep. So this was touched on just a little bit, but people who practice yoga tend to sleep better. And when you're feeling more rested, okay, anybody in here ever eaten because they were tired? Because they needed energy, because they needed a boost of sugar or caffeine or something to keep them going, right? So same thing. If your sleep quality and quantity is improving, that's going to affect the food choices that you make. It also affects your stress hormones. So see how all of these things are so interwoven, as Jason's diagram showed. There are connections between stress and mood and sleep and weight and hormones and yoga practice. And even effects on your brain. So this is emerging research, and we're just sort of starting to discover how yoga can actually affect the brain. We know that yoga practice, especially long-time yoga practice, builds gray matter in the brain. It actually tends to build gray matter in the parts of our brain that control decision-making and attention and reward mechanisms. So building gray matter in areas that help us to make better choices could be another mechanism by which yoga affects weight. And we even are seeing that yoga affects telomere length, so it can even have an impact on the expression of our genetics. And then hormones. So this has come up several times. There are a few hormones that are associated with more adipose tissue, more fat. The more fat that you have in your body, the more of these hormones that you have circulating in your body, and the higher your systemic levels of inflammation are. Higher levels of inflammation are associated with a whole bunch of health conditions that are common among people who are overweight, and also that are associated with chronic pain. Chronic pain also affects mood and food choices. And what we see is that when people practice yoga, these hormones tend to change. And it's not through caloric burn that these hormones are changing. It's through the regulation of our nervous system. So what kinds of yoga should I be doing? Can you all see that? How is it we're the most successful species on the planet, yet we need to pay people to remind us to breathe and drink water? Which is probably the part of yoga that's most effective. So people are asking me often what kind of yoga is appropriate. And what we've seen in the literature is, like many things, it only works if you do it. So the yoga practices that tend to be more effective for weight loss are ones that have more frequent practice. So even if it's a short practice, if there's a little something that you do every day, it's going to maintain that momentum as opposed to something that you might do once a week. The longer you practice, the more of an effect it has. And then if your diet changes as a result of the yoga, then it's going to have more of an impact on weight. Certainly people who go on a retreat, who live in a yoga environment, who are at an ashram, that's going to be more effective. But I think you can get a similar effect by surrounding yourselves with social support from people who are making similar choices. And then a comprehensive inclusion of components. So the physical poses alone are less effective for weight loss than when you have a combination of the poses, the breathing practices, relaxation, mindfulness, meditation. So the research studies that had more yogic components to them tended to have better effects. And it works best when it's reinforced by doing it at home. So not just showing up for a class once a week, but waking up every morning to do a few sun salutations. Find the right teacher in order to keep yourself safe, especially if you haven't been physically active, if you're sedentary, if you have injuries, if you have a larger body. Lots of yoga teachers are not trained to adapt a practice to real people with real bodies. Seek out someone who teaches therapeutic yoga, gentle yoga, beginner yoga. Call ahead and ask, does this teacher have experience working with different populations? And if you go to a class that's not a good fit, take care of yourself, listen to your own body, and make good choices for yourself. If you have any sort of medical conditions, make sure that you check with your doctor before you engage in any sort of exercise program. And particularly, there might be some poses that are inappropriate depending on your condition. So if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, there might be some poses that are inappropriate. If you have arthritis in your knees, there might be some poses that are inappropriate. So check with your doctor about that. And unlike that old exercise philosophy of no pain, no gain, in yoga we like to say no pain, no pain, like just no pain. You shouldn't be doing anything that hurts. If you move into a posture and you're experiencing pain, get out of it. It's not yoga anymore once you're harming yourself, right? And we also have a philosophy of steady effort without attachment. So you keep up, there's a saying, practice and all is coming. So letting go of attachment that you're going to achieve an outcome and know that whatever you're doing is having positive effects. Thank you. So in yoga,